I ended things with him just to see if he'd chase after me. He didn't even question it, just turned and left. And honestly, I'm still reeling from it. I'm Elena, 26 years old, and this disaster began roughly 6 months back when I made the brilliant decision to test my boyfriend's devotion to me. Real genius move, right? Marcus and I had been together for 18 months, and things were becoming increasingly serious. We'd introduced each other to our families, celebrated holidays side by side, and were even beginning to discuss sharing an apartment. His parents completely loved me. His mother would constantly send me cooking instructions, and his father would always reserve me the final slice of dessert at family dinners. His younger sister practically considered me the older sibling she'd always wanted. I genuinely believed we were constructing something meaningful. But here's the reality about relationships. Sometimes they become too predictable. We established our patterns, our preferred delivery restaurants, our weekend rituals. It was pleasant. But where was the intensity? The sweeping romantic acts? All my friends were sharing these amazing stories about how their boyfriends whisked them away on surprise trips or composed songs for them or battled to reclaim their hearts after disagreements. Meanwhile, Marcus was just dependable, consistent. He appeared when he promised he would and acknowledged my birthday and got along with my friends. But I started questioning. Would he genuinely battle for me if circumstances demanded it? I'd browse through social platforms and observe these couples experiencing these theatrical reconciliations after conflicts, and something within me felt envious. Like, how do you truly know someone genuinely cares for you unless they must demonstrate it? Marcus never had to demonstrate it because I never actually challenged him. He had it too easy with me. That's what I began thinking. And once that thought established itself, I couldn't dismiss it. So I selected a random Wednesday evening. We'd experienced a perfectly acceptable weekend together, nothing extraordinary, but nothing negative either. I figured the suddenness of it would really emphasize how serious I was and therefore how seriously he needed to approach winning me back. I practiced my speech, rehearsed appearing sad but resolute in the mirror, and asked him to come to my apartment. I was about to discover precisely how deeply Marcus genuinely cared for me. Or so I believed. When Marcus arrived at my place, he appeared calm, completely oblivious to what awaited him. He moved in to kiss me hello, like always, but I rotated my face so he caught my cheek instead. With satisfaction, I could observe the bewilderment cross his features. Perfect, I thought. He's already detecting something's incorrect. This is going to work flawlessly. Marcus, I've been conducting considerable reflection about us, I said, attempting to sound grave and decisive. And I simply don't believe this is functioning anymore. I want to end things. I waited, anticipating the shock, the inquiries, the objection. In my imagination, he was supposed to appear devastated, perhaps even become tearful slightly. He'd question what went wrong, express how much he loved me, maintain we could navigate through whatever was troubling me. But that's not what occurred at all. Marcus just observed me for an extended moment, his expression transforming from surprise to something else, something serene and almost accepting. Then he said, "Okay?" Just that. Okay. Like I informed him I didn't desire Chinese for dinner. I stared at him waiting for more, but he just sat there processing. No tears, no pleading, no questions about why, just quiet acceptance. I felt my stomach plummet. This wasn't the script I'd composed in my head at all. "That's it?" I finally asked, unable to conceal my shock. "Just okay?" He shrugged, appearing somewhat confused by my reaction. "Well, if that's how you feel, I'm not going to attempt to alter your mind. I respect your decision." Respect my decision? Who requested respect? I wanted passion. I wanted him to fight for me. I felt my cheeks become heated as anger and humiliation surged through me. This was not how this was supposed to unfold at all. So you're just gonna walk away, just like that? After 18 months together, I signified that little to you? Now he appeared genuinely confused. I don't understand. You just stated you wanted to end things. I'm trying to respect that. You're supposed to fight for me, I finally exclaimed, too frustrated to sustain the performance. You're supposed to care enough to at least question why or attempt to change my mind. His expression changed then. A glimpse of something, pain, realization, disappointment crossing his face. Wait, was this some kind of test? I couldn't acknowledge it directly. No, I just thought if you genuinely loved me, you'd at least want to know what went wrong, instead of just accepting it without a word. Marcus stood up slowly, running a hand through his hair. Elena, relationships don't work like that. You can't just say you want to end things when you don't mean it and expect me to somehow interpret your mind. I think I should leave, he said quietly after a moment. I'll pack up anything of yours that might be at my apartment. You can retrieve it whenever, or I can deliver it. That's when I really panicked. He was actually going to depart. So that's it. You're just gonna walk away after everything we've experienced together? Marcus paused at the door and glanced back at me. You said you wanted to end things. I'm respecting your decision. What else am I supposed to do? You're a heartless person who was just using me this entire time. You never genuinely loved me at all. He just shook his head. I'm not gonna do this, Selena. When you're ready to have an honest conversation, let me know. But I don't engage in games. And then he left. He actually left. No tears, no begging, no grand gestures. He just walked away like I hadn't just detonated our entire relationship. I spent that night alternating between crying and fuming, anticipating a call or message that never arrived. By morning, I was convinced that his reaction just confirmed what I'd suspected all along. He didn't love me enough. A man who truly loved a woman would never release her that easily, right? The following few days were a blur of checking my phone, jumping every time it buzzed, only to be disappointed when it wasn't him. I started wondering if maybe I'd made a terrible mistake, but my pride wouldn't permit me to admit it. Not yet. 3 days after our separation, I received a message from Marcus's sister, asking what had occurred. Apparently, he'd informed his family we were finished, but hadn't provided many details. His mother was distressed. She'd really appreciated me. Great, I thought. Now his whole family probably considers I'm the villain. I needed to gain control of the narrative quickly. The morning after our separation, I was already constructing the story to my friends. He just didn't care enough to even question why, I told my best friend, Natalie, over coffee. Can you believe that? I inform him I want to end things and he just says, okay, and leaves. No questions, no nothing. Natalie frowned, stirring her latte. So you wanted to break up with him, but you're upset that he accepted it? I rolled my eyes. It's not about that. It's about the principle. If he genuinely loved me, he would have at least wanted to know why, or attempted to repair things. As the days passed, I carefully constructed my version of events for different audiences. To his sister Jessica, I said there had been problems developing for a while. To mutual friends, I suggested that Marcus had been emotionally distant. To colleagues, I shrugged and said, sometimes things just don't work out. Each time, I positioned myself as the reasonable one who had attempted to make things work while painting Marcus as cold and indifferent. But not everyone purchased my story. His sister Jessica called me a week after the separation. I talked to Marcus, she said without preamble. He told me what really happened. My stomach dropped. I don't know what he told you, but she said you broke up with him as some kind of test to see if he'd fight for you, she interrupted. Is that true? That's not... He's twisting what happened, I sputtered. Stop lying, Elena, Jessica said, her voice uncharacteristically hard. Do you have any idea how manipulative that is? To end a relationship you don't actually want to end just to test someone's reaction? She hung up and I stared at my phone in shock. How dare she speak to me like that? And how dare Marcus tell her the truth instead of adhering to my version of events? I immediately posted a vague but clearly sad status on social media. Sometimes the people you think care about you the most are the first to walk away when things get tough. I added a broken heart symbol for good measure. The likes and sympathetic comments poured in. "You deserve better," one friend wrote. "His loss," said another. This was more like it, the validation I craved. But not all my friends were so supportive. My roommate from college, Sierra, who had always been painfully honest, texted me privately. "Did you actually want to break up with him, or was this some kind of test?" "It's not wrong to want someone to fight for you," I texted back defensively. "No, but it is wrong to manipulate someone like that," she responded. "If you wanted more romance or reassurance, you should have just told him." As the days turned into weeks with no contact from Marcus, reality began to sink in. He wasn't going to come crawling back. He wasn't going to appear at my door with flowers. He wasn't going to flood my phone pleading for another chance. I'd ended things with him, and he'd simply accepted it and moved on. That's when the panic really set in. I might have actually lost him for good. And over what? A stupid test that any reasonable person would see through? What had I been thinking? But I still couldn't bring myself to reach out and admit my mistake. My pride wouldn't let me. Instead, I doubled down on my social media campaign, posting photos of nights out with friends, new outfits, fancy drinks, all carefully curated to show Marcus, who I knew still followed me, that I was living my best life without him. In reality, I was checking his profiles obsessively, looking for any sign that he was miserable without me. But his posts remained frustratingly normal. Work updates, a hiking trip with friends, photos of a new dish he cooked. No sad songs, no melancholy quotes, nothing to indicate he was pining for me. 1 month after our separation, I still hadn't heard directly from Marcus. I'd run into a few mutual friends who had seen him, and their reports were infuriating. "He seems good," they'd say. Or worse, "He asked about you, hopes you're doing well." Hopes I'm doing well? He should be devastated. I decided it was time to orchestrate a chance encounter. I knew his routine, where he got coffee on Saturday mornings, which grocery store he preferred, his favorite bookstore. I started frequenting these places, dressed to kill, hoping to bump into him accidentally. After 3 tries, it finally worked. I spotted him at the local farmer's market, examining some apples at a produce stand. My heart raced as I approached, trying to appear casual. "Marcus, what a surprise," I said, feigning shock at seeing him. He looked up momentarily startled. "Alina, hi." "How have you been?" I asked, stepping closer. "I'm okay," he said with a small nod. "You?" "Oh, you know, keeping busy," I said with a practiced laugh. "Listen, I think we should talk about what happened. It was just a big misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yes, I didn't really want to break up. I was just going through something, having a bad day. You know how it is." "So, you didn't mean it when you said you wanted to end our relationship?" he asked, his voice measured. "Not really," I admitted, sensing an opening. "I was just testing you, I guess, seeing if you'd fight for me." Something shifted in his expression then. A hardening around the eyes, a slight tightening of his jaw. "I've been seeing a therapist these past few weeks," he said, surprising me. "Talking about our relationship, about patterns I didn't notice before." "You're in therapy because of our breakup?" I asked, hope rising. Maybe he was devastated after all. "Not exactly," he said. "I'm in therapy because I realized I have a pattern of being with women who test me instead of communicating directly, who expect me to read their minds, who create problems so I can solve them and prove my devotion." I felt my face flush. "That's not what When you broke up with me as a test," he continued calmly, It was like a wake-up call. I realized how unhealthy our dynamic had become. How I was always trying to guess what you really wanted instead of you just telling me. I respect myself too much now to go back to that. He said, "If you really care about someone, you don't play games with their feelings." It wasn't a game, I protested. I just needed to know you cared. By hurting both of us? He asked. That's not love, Alina. That's insecurity. I felt tears sting my eyes. So, you're saying there's no chance for us? Marcus sighed. I'm saying I need someone who says what they mean, and means what they say, who doesn't use breaking up as a manipulation tactic. He paid for his apples, wished me well, and walked away again. Only this time, it felt much more final. I stood there among the weekend shoppers, feeling oddly hollow. He'd changed somehow in our weeks apart, become more certain, more grounded. Meanwhile, I was still playing the same games, expecting different results. For the first time, I wondered if maybe, just maybe, I was the problem. But that moment of self-awareness was fleeting. As I walked home alone, I convinced myself that Marcus was being unreasonable. So I'd made one mistake. Was he really going to throw away everything we had over it? If he really loved me, he would forgive me, right? This thinking started a downward spiral that consumed the next several weeks of my life. I became obsessed with getting Marcus back. Not because I had actually learned from my mistake, but because his rejection only made me want him more. The fact that he was moving on while I was stuck made me frantic. I started texting him more frequently, casual at first, then increasingly desperate. His responses grew shorter and less frequent, until finally he asked me directly to give him space. But I couldn't. I convinced myself that persistence was the key, that if I showed him how much I cared, he'd have to take me back. I read articles about winning back an ex, joined forums where people shared reconciliation success stories, even bought a book called Make Him Come Crawling Back. My friends started to distance themselves, as all I talked about was Marcus and my plans to get him back. My work suffered too. I was late 3 times in 1 week because I'd stayed up all night stalking his social media and slept through my alarm. Then came the breaking point. I heard through a mutual friend that Marcus had been promoted at work, something he'd been working toward when we were together. In my twisted logic, I decided this was the perfect opportunity to congratulate him in person. I showed up at his workplace around closing time with a small gift and a card. I'd put on his favorite dress of mine and spent hours on my hair and makeup. This would remind him of what he was missing. I was sure of it. When he walked out of the building and saw me waiting, his expression wasn't pleased or even surprised. It was wary, almost resigned. "Alana, what are you doing here?" he asked, glancing around uncomfortably as colleagues passed by. "I heard about your promotion," I said brightly, holding out the gift. "I wanted to congratulate you in person." "This isn't appropriate," he said quietly. "I asked you to give me space." "But I'm just being friendly," I insisted, feeling desperate as I saw the plan crumbling. "We can still be friends, right?" "No, Alina, we can't," he said firmly. "Not right now." A few of his coworkers had slowed their pace, obviously eavesdropping. Embarrassment and anger flooded through me. "Fine," I said, my voice rising. "Keep acting like you're so perfect, like you never made any mistakes in our relationship." "I'm going to go now," Marcus said, his voice controlled but tight. "Please don't come to my workplace again." As he walked toward the parking lot, something in me snapped. I followed him, raising my voice. "You think you're too good for me now? With your fancy promotion? You wouldn't have even applied for it if I hadn't encouraged you." Tighten. He turned back, and for the first time, I saw real anger in his eyes. "Stop. Now." A small crowd of his colleagues had gathered, watching the spectacle I was creating. One woman stepped forward. "Should I call security, Marcus?" The humiliation of that moment hit me like a physical blow. I'd become the crazy ex in public. The gift fell from my hands as I turned and hurried away, tears streaming down my face. Later that night, I received a text from Marcus. "Don't contact me again. If you do, I'll have to take more formal steps to enforce that boundary." It was too much to bear. I shut myself in my apartment for the entire weekend, ignoring calls from concerned friends, eating ice cream straight from the container, and watching sad romantic movies where the guy always came back in the end. But as Sunday evening approached, a hard truth began to settle in my gut. Marcus wasn't coming back. And maybe, just maybe, this whole situation was more my fault than I wanted to admit. 6 months after our separation, I was invited to a housewarming party thrown by mutual friends. I knew there was a chance Marcus might be there, but I'd been avoiding social gatherings for so long that I'd decided to risk it. Besides, I looked good these days. I'd lost weight, mostly from stress, and bought a new outfit specifically for occasions where I might run into him. I arrived fashionably late, making an entrance I hoped would be noticed. The host, Dylan, greeted me warmly and led me to the drink table. As I scanned the room, that's when I saw him. Marcus was standing by the window, laughing at something someone had said. But it wasn't just any someone. It was a woman I didn't recognize. Pretty in an effortless way, with a genuine smile that reached her eyes. "Who's that?" I asked Dylan, trying to sound casual. "Oh, that's Marcus's girlfriend, Lauren," Dylan said. "They've been dating for a couple months now. She's really cool. You'll like her." The room seemed to tilt slightly. Girlfriend? He had a girlfriend already? I downed my drink in one gulp and immediately reached for another. Throughout the evening, I watched them together from across the room. The way he looked at her, the casual intimacy of his hand on the small of her back, the way she made him laugh, a real, genuine laugh I recognized from happier times. The worst part wasn't that he had moved on. It was how healthy they looked together. There was none of the drama that had characterized our relationship. They communicated easily, checking in with each other without seeming clingy. When she spoke, he listened attentively. "They're good together, aren't they?" a voice said beside me. I turned to find Jessica, Marcus's sister, watching me with a knowing look. "Defensive, I guess," I said, trying to sound indifferent. "He's happy," she said. "Happier than I've seen him in a long time." The implication hung in the air between us. "Happier than when he was with me." "Good for him," I said tightly. Jessica sipped her drink. "You know, the whole story came out about why you two really broke up." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Your test," she said. "How you broke up with him just to see if he'd fight for you. I mentioned it to Dylan months ago, and you know how news travels in this group." Horror washed over me as I realized why some people at the party had been giving me strange looks. They all knew. They knew I was the toxic ex who played mind games. "That's not exactly how it happened," I started, but Jessica cut me off. "Save it," she said. "I'm just telling you so you understand why some doors are permanently closed to you now." She walked away, leaving me standing alone, clutching my drink like a lifeline. Across the room, Marcus and Lauren were preparing to leave, saying their goodbyes. He hadn't spoken a single word to me all night, hadn't even acknowledged my presence. As they passed near me on their way out, Lauren smiled politely. She had no idea who I was, I realized. Marcus's eyes met mine for a brief moment, and I saw no anger there, no resentment, not even discomfort, just nothing, complete indifference. I had become a stranger to him. That night marked the beginning of my social exile. Invitations dwindled. Friends became busy when I suggested getting together. The story of my manipulation had spread, cementing my reputation as someone who couldn't be trusted in relationships. At work, my pattern of deception extended to taking credit for colleagues' ideas, a habit I hadn't even realized I had until my manager called me out on it during a performance review. "There's a concerning pattern here," she said. "This needs to stop, or we'll have to reconsider your position with us." A week later, I ran into Natalie at a coffee shop. I hadn't seen her in months. She'd been among the first friends to distance herself after the party. "How are you?" I asked, genuinely hoping to reconnect. "Busy," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Look, I should go." "Wait," I said, suddenly desperate. "Have you heard anything about Marcus?" She sighed. "Elena, you need to move on. He has." Defensive. "I know. With Lauren," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "They're engaged," Natalie said. "He proposed last weekend." The news hit me like a physical blow. Engaged after just 6 months together? We'd been together for 18 months, and he'd never even hinted at marriage. As I watched her leave, the full weight of what I'd lost crashed down on me. Not just Marcus, but friends, respect, trust, all sacrificed on the altar of my pride and insecurity. For the first time, I had to face the possibility that I might have been wrong, that my test wasn't just a harmless way to gauge Marcus's feelings. It was a manipulative power play that revealed more about my character than his. But even this realization came with a qualifier. If only he had understood what I really meant. If only he hadn't overreacted. If only he had given me a second chance. I still couldn't fully own my mistake, couldn't accept that the consequences I was facing, the loneliness, the damaged reputation, the lost relationships, were entirely of my own making. And that's why 6 months later, I'm still alone, watching from the periphery as life goes on without me. Marcus is building a future with Lauren. My friends have moved on to more healthy relationships. My career has stalled, as my reputation for untrustworthiness has followed me there too. All because I ended things with him just to see if he'd fight for me. And he didn't question it, just turned and left. It turned out to be the smartest thing he could have done. For him. Not for me. Never for me.